10 million square miles. For 2 centuries, that's how much of the world belonged to a single empire. It stretched from Europe to the Pacific, built by warriors who emerged from grasslands so vast they seemed infinite. Then it vanished, almost overnight. And in its place, a unique world took shape. Infinite horizons, impossible winters, cities that move, ways of life that evolved in one of the emptiest places on Earth. This is Mongolia, where the empire fell but the spirit endured, where impossible became tradition. In a land of winters that freeze solid and deserts that can strip the flesh from bone, horses aren't just animals, they're survival. They outnumber people here, and for 1,000 years have carried this nation's story across distances so vast you can ride for days without seeing another soul. But the horse also carries something else. The memory of an empire that once ruled half the known world. And in the heart of Mongolia, there's one valley where it all began, a place that still holds the secrets of how a people from the edge of the map could rise to dominate it. The Orkhon flows through golden grassland, peaceful as any country stream. This quiet valley seems unremarkable until you dig a little deeper. There's a reason Mongolia's greatest statue faces east. 40 meters of steel and silver, Genghis Khan sits astride his horse, gazing toward the rising sun, the same direction his armies rode when they changed the world forever. On a clear day, you can see this monument from 30 kilometers away, a steel reminder that the Khan's presence still dominates these steppes. His enemies never slept easy because they knew that somewhere beyond that horizon, the Khan was always watching. And below him, bronze warriors on horseback stand ready to ride again, as if 8 centuries of peace might end at any moment. Nearby stands Hulun, the mother who raised Genghis Khan when survival meant uniting the tribes or watching them die. Her strength forged the greatest warrior the world has ever seen. Follow the Orkhon upstream, and the river reveals its secrets slowly. Where it tumbles over Ulan Tsutgalan waterfall, ancient water meets ancient stone. "20 meters of pure force crashing into the canyon below, sending mist that catches the light like scattered diamonds. The sound echoes off canyon walls like distant thunder, a rhythm that has carved these cliffs for thousands of years. This valley has been collecting the dreams of empires for millennia. Long before Genghis Khan, sacred deer stones stood here, carved with running stags and sun symbols where shamans once spoke to spirits. Centuries later, the Turkic Khaganate left tall memorials at Bombagor, etched with the deeds of warrior kings. And when the Uyghurs ruled these lands, they built their capital, Kar Balgas, whose crumbling walls still trace the outline of a vanished city. Layer upon layer, each civilization rose, left its mark, and disappeared. Yet the Orkhon Valley endured. Erdene Monastery stands like a fortress of faith, its white walls enclosing one of Mongolia's most sacred spaces. Built from the actual stones of the vanished empire's capital, it rises like a phoenix from imperial ruins. "108 stupas mark its perimeter, each one a prayer made solid, a meditation in stone." Inside these walls, Buddhist monks have chanted the same prayers for over 4 centuries. The monastery survived wars, revolutions, and purges that destroyed countless others across Mongolia. From the rubble of conquest, they built an empire of faith. But faith couldn't protect them from everything. At Ongi Monastery, walls that stood for centuries crumble into dust. In a single decade, the 1930s, Soviet purges nearly erased Mongolia's spiritual soul. These ruins don't just mark the death of buildings. They mark the moment when Mongolia almost forgot who it was. Yet in this same valley where empires died, something else refused to disappear. In the distance, a herd moves across the grassland with a rhythm older than any human civilization. These are Przewalski's horses, the last truly wild horses on Earth. They disappeared from these steppes in the 1960s, declared extinct in the wild. But Mongolians refused to let that story end there, spending decades bringing them back from captivity around the world. Watching them gallop is like seeing living history, horses whose ancestors grazed here alongside woolly mammoths. Not all of Mongolia's treasures are ancient or wild. Just east of the capital, a granite giant shaped like a turtle has been standing mid-step for millions of years. Locals call it Turtle Rock, a place to pause and take in the view before heading back onto the open road. Today, the empire's capital isn't here in this sacred valley. It's Ulaanbaatar, a city that didn't even exist when Genghis rode, now home to half of Mongolia's people. This is the world's coldest capital city, where winter temperatures can plummet to minus 40 Celsius, yet life pulses with surprising warmth. In the heart of the city, Gandantic Chinlen Monastery rises like an island of tranquility amid the urban rush. Here, a 26-meter golden Buddha sits in meditation, watching over a city caught between worlds. Prayer wheels spin endlessly in the hands of the faithful, each turn sending mantras into the thin mountain air. The same devotion that built Erdena Zoo from ancient stones now thrives amid apartment blocks and office towers. But perhaps nowhere is Mongolia's transformation more visible than in Sukbata Square, where the old and new Mongolia meet face to face. The Parliament building stands as a monument to democracy, while Genghis Khan still sits in bronze, watching over a government his nomadic mind could never have imagined. High above the city, at Zaisan Tolgoi, a Soviet-era memorial overlooks everything we've journeyed through so far. The sprawling capital, the sacred valley beyond, and the endless steppes that stretch to every horizon. Inside, a massive circular mural tells the story of Mongolian-Soviet friendship through scenes of shared struggle and victory, painted in the heroic style of another era. From here, you can see how all of Mongolia's stories converge. The ancient empire, the Buddhist faith, the Soviet influence, and the democratic nation that emerged from it all. From this valley, the world's greatest empire once rose and fell. But something deeper remained, a spirit that could survive anywhere. To understand its true strength, we follow the ancient route south, where the land becomes Mongolia's ultimate test. The Gobi looks endless from above. Rolling dunes stretch beyond every horizon, golden waves frozen in time. But this desert breathes with life that shouldn't exist, and every grain of sand holds a story. At Kongeren Els, the tallest dunes in Mongolia rise like cathedrals of sand. But listen closely as the wind moves across their peaks. The dunes are singing, a low, haunting note that resonates through your chest. Scientists call it sand avalanche frequency, but locals know better. These dunes have been humming the same ancient song for thousands of years. At Chagan Suvarga, white limestone cliffs rise like frozen waterfalls against the endless blue sky. Stand at the edge and the desert spreads below you for hundreds of kilometers, a sea of sand and stone that makes you feel like the last person on Earth. These towering walls tell the story of an ancient ocean that once covered the Gobi. Stripes of colour, like pages in Earth's diary, record millions of years when this desert was a shallow sea teeming with life. Marine fossils still emerge from the white stone. Shells and corals from a world that vanished long before the first grass grew on these steppes. But the Gobi holds secrets far older and stranger than ancient seas. Soon we'll see the discovery that changed how we understand the prehistoric world. A mystery that waited 70 million years to be solved. Scattered across this vastness, white circles dot the landscape like flowers blooming in sand. These are yurts, felt homes that have sheltered nomads for over 1,000 years. We'll step inside these remarkable dwellings later. But for now, just marvel at how something so simple can provide refuge in one of Earth's harshest environments. But a home in the desert means nothing without the right companion. What kind of animal thrives where temperatures swing from -40 in winter to +40 in summer? Meet the Bactrian camel. 2 humps, thick winter coats, and an attitude that says the Gobi doesn't scare them. They can drink water so salty it would kill other animals, go weeks without a drop, and still carry a family's entire life across impossible distances. Watch a herder saddle one of these giants and you understand why the Silk Road ever existed at all. The Gobi covers a third of Mongolia, and these portable sanctuaries paired with desert-born animals make it not just survivable, but livable. But survival in the desert requires more than shelter and camels. It requires faith. Granite towers rise from the desert floor at Baga Gazrin Chulu, like a stone forest, each formation carved by millions of years of wind and weather. But hidden among these rocks lies something unexpected. The ruins of a 17th century monastery where monks once sought enlightenment in absolute isolation. For centuries, nomads have stopped here to pray, leaving blue silk scarves that flutter in the desert wind. Meditation caves remain carved into the granite, where monks once sought solitude in the absolute silence of the desert. In the heart of this burning desert lies Yol Valley, where ice survives all year round. Walk through this narrow gorge in July and your breath still fogs the air. Frozen waterfalls cling to canyon walls while the desert bakes just outside. Winter forgot to leave this one place. Sphinx Rock stands sentinel here in the Gobi, shaped by winds that have been sculpting this landscape since the world was young. Ancient Silk Road caravans once navigated by these landmarks, following springs and reading the desert like nomads still do today. At Bayanzag, the flaming cliffs glow like embers at sunset, carved by wind and time into a landscape that feels prehistoric. And here's where that ancient mystery finally reveals itself. In 1923, American explorer Roy Chapman Andrews made a discovery that changed paleontology forever: the first dinosaur eggs ever found. This was the impossible find hidden in the Gobi's depths. Local herders had always found strange bones here, weaving them into legends of dragons that once ruled the earth. Turns out they weren't too far from the truth. But the desert's wildness pales beside what waits in the mountains, where ancient partnerships defy every law of nature. These peaks stand at the meeting point of four nations: Mongolia, China, Russia, Kazakhstan. Their borders drawn by distant politicians who never set foot on these slopes. But their highest guardian belongs only to Mongolia. Kuiten Peak rises 4,374 meters above sea level, crowned with glaciers that have watched empires rise and fall in the valleys below. But what's most remarkable about these peaks isn't their height, it's how little they've changed. Carved into the rocks at their base, ancient hunters still tell their stories. Some of these petroglyphs date back over 12,000 years, to a time when the last ice age still gripped the planet. Bronze Age hands carved images of hunters with their prey, wild animals moving across eternal landscapes, rituals that connect earth to sky. And here's what's extraordinary: they tell the same story as the people who live here today. In the high valleys of Bayanulgi, that ancient story continues. This hunter's partner weighs 6 kilos, sees 4 times farther than we can, and can break a wolf's back with a single strike. Meet the golden eagles, almost always female because they're bigger, more aggressive, and absolutely fearless. Their vision is so sharp, they can spot prey from over 2 kilometers away, turning these mountains into their personal hunting ground. But the real magic isn't the eagles, it's the bond between hunter and bird. Watch a Kazakh eagle hunter work with his partner and you witness a friendship that transcends species. The apprenticeship begins in childhood, learning to read the wind, understand the mountains, and earn the trust of a creature that could easily choose freedom over partnership. Every winter, they hunt together through snow and cold that would break most people. Every spring, the eagles are released to breed wild and free, returning only if they choose to. High in these peaks sits an impossible wonder, a lake that breathes. Geyser Lake bubbles with geothermal springs that create warm oases in a landscape where summer barely visits. Technically, this marvel sits just across the border in Russia, but the eagles don't recognize human boundaries. Neither do the hunters who follow ancient paths through these mountains, where the earth itself reminds you that some forces are more powerful than politics. These mountains shelter some of the world's most elusive creatures. Argali sheep with horns that spiral like ancient crowns. Ibex that dance across cliff faces that would terrify mountain goats. Snow leopards that move like ghosts through valleys where most locals will never see them. In the high meadows, another partnership defines mountain life. Yaks move like SUVs across slopes where other cattle would never survive. Their thick coats and massive lungs perfectly adapted to altitudes that leave visitors gasping. These gentle giants provide everything: milk, meat, wool, and the strength to carry impossible loads across impossible terrain. Watch a herder work with his yaks, and you understand that in the mountains, respect isn't given, it's earned one step at a time. But where these mountains end lies a Mongolia so transformed, you'll question if you've entered an entirely different country. From the peaks of the Altai, we follow the ancient paths north, and Mongolia transforms once more. The snow-capped mountains give way to endless forests, and where glacial streams once carved through granite, now pristine waters stretch beyond every horizon. This is Lake Kovsgol, so pure you can drink directly from its surface, one of the cleanest lakes in the world. In summer, this northern frontier feels almost gentle. Green hills roll down to the water's edge, where herders graze their animals and children splash in shallows that seem impossibly blue. But don't let the summer warmth fool you. This same landscape will test every living thing when winter arrives. Enter the taiga forests that carpet these northern mountains, and you step into a different Mongolia entirely. Here, among the pines and larches, live the Duka, one of Mongolia's smallest ethnic groups, numbering only a few hundred souls. They are the last reindeer herders, people who chose the animal built for snow, not sand. Watch a Duca herder work with his reindeer and you understand that Mongolia has many faces. These aren't horses built for speed across open ground, but steady creatures with velvet antlers who know every tree and forests most people couldn't navigate. The herders milk them, craft their shed antlers into tools, and trust them completely in terrain where one mistake changes everything. When winter finally claims the north, the transformation is absolute. The same Lake Kovskol that sparkled blue in summer now stretches white and silent, a frozen highway connecting communities that would otherwise be cut off for months. In Katgal, a small town on the lake's southern shore, winter means 6 months, where the outside world becomes nothing but wind and snow. But these northern winters, harsh as they are, pale beside the devastation that climate change has brought to Mongolia's herders. Zud, the devastating winter conditions that can wipe out entire herds in a matter of days, have grown more frequent and more severe. What once happened, perhaps once in a generation, now strikes every few years, breaking the ancient rhythm that nomadic families have followed for centuries. When the animals die, the nomads must choose: starve on the steppes or abandon everything their ancestors built. More and more, they're choosing survival over tradition. The evidence of this exodus is everywhere, but perhaps nowhere more clearly than in Arvaikir, a small town in central Mongolia that has become a refuge for families fleeing the failing steppes. Arvaikir sprawls across the hills, expanding with each brutal winter that forces more families down from the north. The town breathes outward: new tin roofs, fresh wooden fences, clusters of yurts tucked behind permanent houses as former nomads settle into a life they never chose. Beyond its spreading edge, the steppe rolls away empty, increasingly abandoned by the very people it once sustained. For 1,000 years, these grasslands have shaped a people and a nation. Here, where the horizon stretches so far it curves with the earth itself, riders gallop in formation across steppe that seems to breathe with the rhythm of hoofbeats. This is more than just landscape. It's the stage where Mongolia's history, traditions, and spirit all come together. Throughout this journey, we've seen Mongolia's many faces. But here in these endless grasslands is where the country truly reveals itself. Scattered across green plains like white flowers blooming in an ocean of grass, yurts dot the landscape in patterns older than cities. Over a quarter of Mongolia's people still live nomadically or semi-nomadically, following rhythms that have so far outlasted every empire that ever tried to change them. Building a yurt is an art passed down through generations. Wooden lattice walls unfold like accordion ribs, while carved roof poles slot together with practiced precision. Felt layers wrap the frame like layers of protection against wind and cold, secured with ropes that have held families safe for centuries. In under 2 hours, skilled families can transform wooden poles and felt into a complete home, a feat of engineering that has housed nomads for over a millennium. Step inside a yurt and you're welcomed into more than shelter. You're welcomed into family. The circular space flows around carved wooden poles painted bright orange and red, while the door faces south to catch every ray of sun. These homes can be packed in an hour, yet the hospitality inside feels eternal. Arrive as a stranger, and you'll find yourself drinking salted milk tea, sharing dried cheese, and wondering how walls of felt can hold so much warmth. From these grasslands came the war steeds of Genghis Khan, horses so tough they could survive on grass alone and carry warriors further than any enemy thought possible. Today's herders still judge a horse by the ancient standards, not beauty, but heart. The horse remains the measure of the Mongol spirit, not just transport, but partner, teacher, and keeper of the deepest traditions. But nowhere does Mongolia's heart beat louder than during Naadam, when the entire nation gathers to celebrate what makes them Mongol. Wrestling exhibits strength passed down through generations of warriors. Archery demands the precision that once decided the fate of empires. And horse racing, where children as young as 5 become jockeys, proves that endurance still runs in Mongol blood. Watch these 3 manly games, Irian, Girvan, Naadam, and you witness living history. But it's the horse racing that captures something deeper. Across these same grasslands runs the Mongol Derby, the longest horse race in the world, 1,000 kilometers that follows the ancient postal routes of the empire. Watch the thundering hooves kick up dust clouds that drift across endless green, and you see why Mongol horses once carried messages and armies faster than any force on earth. They race across terrain that would challenge seasoned riders anywhere else, proving they carry the same fearless spirit that once conquered continents. Every rider who climbs onto a racing horse carries forward traditions that stretch back to when these grasslands ruled the world. Today's journey ends at Taikar Chulu, a towering rock carved with thousands of inscriptions spanning millennia. Ancient shamans, empire builders, and modern herders have all left their mark here, each generation adding to a stone chronicle that never stops growing. This is Mongolia's true monument, not to conquest, but to the unbroken spirit of people who chose to call this impossible place home. And if you think Mongolia sounds impossible to live in, imagine a country where people saw active volcanoes spewing lava and decided to call it home. Click the video on screen to see how Indonesians turned the world's most dangerous islands into paradise.